Hey guys, well, we're starting out here our latest adventure and off-road origins. We are going to be tackling the Pine Nut Mountains in northern Nevada. It's a destination that we know well. It's going to be a quick, short in and out trip, nothing spectacular, just more about exploring the area and getting a little more familiar with it. I'm going to introduce to you the newest guest of our show, Chris Fox, in the middle here. You will know from our previous journeys, Steve Elias and Jake Bratt. We're all along for this journey again, and we are ready to tackle it, so let's get into it, guys.
Of course, I failed to introduce myself. I'm Cody Bessler. We started out from our homes in Northern California, making our way east. We'll enter the mountains through Sunrise Pass, just outside of Gardnerville, Nevada. In a moment, we'll give you a little background of our experiences out here, but first, let's get aired down.
We got aired down at a convenience store near the end of the pavement, and in less than a mile, we were on the dirt. Cody and I were the first of our group to explore this area over a decade ago. Between online sources and topo maps, we were going out on a monthly basis to explore everything from the ghost town of Como to the Artesia Hot Spring. Despite years of our exploring, we had yet to see everything that this area actually had to offer. Nearly a year before this trip, I got a call from Cody about this great trail that we had somehow overlooked. He actually discovered this trail and started down it, but only got about 3 miles in due to difficult conditions and very limited winch points if self-recovery was needed. We made a mental note to revisit this trail once we were home from our Alexander Mackenzie trip.
A couple months later, and here we are. Though Jake and Cody were the first of our group to explore this area, I've joined them on many camping and four-wheeling trips with adventure around at every corner. We've lost keys to Cody's truck, we've had broken axles, we've been stuck and recovered by a mining haul truck, we even had a truck fire, but those are stories for another time. Now it's time for a new adventure.
For Chris Fox, this is his first time out to the Pine Nut Mountains and the first time wheeling with us. You'll hear us call him Fox as the trip progresses for a couple of simple reasons. First, our cameraman for this trip is also named Chris, and we have a great number of friends named Chris, so we just call him Fox, even when there are no other Chris's around to get confused by. With all that said, let's get into this, boys. My brother and I explored the first few miles of trail here a little more than a year before, and as Jake mentioned, we turned back. We were a solo vehicle and trail conditions were getting more difficult as we progressed. Knowing what I know now, I would consider doing it solo, but not knowing conditions then and continuing to go forward would have been foolish. I have many tools to help in a self-recovery situation, but it's best to try new trails with unknown conditions in a group. After all, the best recovery tool is another vehicle for support, and, if nothing else, a solid recovery point.
We stopped briefly at the top of this hill before navigating a series of deep ruts made by erosion. We would descend down into the canyon where we would cross the creek several times.
As we descended the hill towards the creek bottom, we came upon our first little wash that crosses the trail, making tricky approach and departure angles with an off-camber exit.
always were the bigger man. Made me be the best I can. If all it was just you and me, everything would be so easy. Yes, everything would be so easy. At times we have a little fight. I was left, you were right. I realized those cold nights.
Yeah, you appreciate how steep the angles are from inside Jake's cab looking down as Fox goes through. It's definitely unnerving.
Hey Steve, that reminds me. When are you going to get a ride of your own? I know Cody loves the company, especially on our longer trips, but I want to see you in action.
Between all the mishaps we've had over the years, I feel great spectating. I actually love watching how you guys handle some of the difficulties I've seen you both work through. Also, I'm not sure I'm skilled enough to make my way down trails like this with you guys.
Don't sell yourself short, Steve. We all start out learning as we go. With that said, I do really enjoy your camaraderie as we make these journeys together. It wouldn't be the same without you spotting me and chatting me up on these longer trips. But if and when you're ready, we'll be ready to help you build and wheel your ride.
Okay, now that we're done with the hand-holding, let's get back to wheeling. Once we made our way down to the creek, we found ourselves driving not only on the banks, but the creek bed as well. It will unknowingly prove to be much more of a challenge over the next day and a half than we had originally thought. Cody anticipated we would drive this trail in a few hours, but as you're going to discover, we had found ourselves a great little trail that took a little bit longer.
We sure had. It's a fun trail with several technical sections. It should be noted, though, it's not for stock four-wheel drives. A lift and armor are a minimum for this trail. It's also a great idea to bring a partner to help you spot.
As you can see, our vehicles are not lifted to the moon with 40-inch tires. Our goal is to have moderately modified vehicles that are able to comfortably travel thousands of miles to a trail, drive it, and then drive back home. We aren't set up as extreme rock crawlers. If that's the type of ride you have, you should breeze through this trail.
Even still, if you plan on driving this trail, plan on a full day of fun. It took us a day and a half, but the filming takes time. It's a beautiful little canyon with some really cool areas that you may want to stop and explore. If you do want to camp on the trail like we did, there's a few spots that have been used and are ready with campfire rings set up. If you do travel this or any other trail, please pack out what you bring in, maybe even a little more. This keeps the sport going.
When we initially set out on the trail, we set our pressures to about 18 psi. We have found this to be the sweet spot for tires without beadlocks. Much less, and we find it easier to lose a bead in these types of conditions. We do air down to as low as 13 psi on the sand depending on the need. Otherwise, our go-to on virtually every trip is 18 psi.
Also, I'm a proponent of a high lift style jack. It's a great tool for self-recovery, and I did use it when I originally discovered the trail with my brother. I had found myself hung up on a sizable rock with no other way to get off. The high lift made it a very easy recovery. I should also note some of their drawbacks though. For people unaccustomed to operating them, they can be dangerous. Take the time to get to know how they work before you need to use one for the first time. The other thing is, you pretty much need solid bumpers and rock sliders to use them for the most part. I've wheeled with guys that would bring them along every time, but had never used them before, and even if they needed to, there was no way to use it on their vehicle. Anyway, there are a few decent how-to videos on YouTube that show you techniques on how to use them. Watch, learn, and most importantly, if you choose to have one on your rig, try it out at home so you understand how they work before needing it on the trail.
Knew a girl named Lacey. I knew a girl named Lacey. She stood away a little spacey.
We came across these side-by-sides in a tight section of the trail while following the creek bed. We waved as we passed, but we didn't bother stopping to chat as they had to pull in the bypass here and seemed anxious for us to get past. They were the only people we saw on the trail today.
This is very close to where I needed the high lift jack on my last foray through here. I was distracted and drove myself onto a big boulder and couldn't scrape my way back off. Fortunately, I have a full skid plate set, so the only thing damaged was my pride.
Funny thing is, Cody damages his pride a lot. In all seriousness though, he typically leads our pack, as he has the most armored, if not the most capable truck of our group. Fox had mentioned multiple times that seeing where Cody goes gives him a better idea where to go himself. If Cody picks a great line, then it's easy to follow. If he struggles, then he knows to pick a different line.
I'ma need something more than that, more than the way you bleed. Yeah. I'ma need something more than your body.
We came to a little more serious section here, and Cody deliberately chose a much more challenging line through these boulders. I honestly didn't think this would work.
I was determined to make my line work through here.
Yeah, I've seen this before. He's not going to back out of this one. He's fully committed to make it through this no matter what. Just a reminder that the top of his wheel wells sit a little over 41 inches. That gives you a little bit more perspective on the size of the rocks here.
Stacy, she knew just how to make me crazy. I felt so drained when we made love. Yeah. I swear that woman drained my blood. I'ma need something more than that, more than the way you bleed. Yeah. I'ma need something more in your body, something I can feel. Yeah.
And there it is. The tires being wet kept him from climbing right up, but now that he's up and the lockers are on, he will drag himself the rest of the way over and out the other side.
She's so smooth. Yeah.
That's all slider right now. Okay, that'll work. And a little bit of muffler at the end. Nice!
Fox and Jake chose the easier track at this crossing, though it was not without some drama for Jake. The shorter wheelbase on Fox's 4Runner allowed him to squeeze through without issue, but Jake ran his right rear tire into a big boulder. Each time he bounced back off of it, he was closer and closer to bashing that rock into his rocker panels. We stopped them and gave him some instructions.
But each time you rock back, you get closer and closer to your rocker panel, especially when you're bouncing, right?
Go. Give her the beams, let her slide, and go. Always keep
Get
the
up
wheels
over.
perfectly straight and
Get
go
up
over.
over.
Give her the beams and let her ride, dude. Yeah, there you go. Nice, good job.
Good job.
Now you got this view.
Straight.
Filming this obstacle, like the others in this canyon, didn't leave many spots to set up for an optimal camera angle. It doesn't actually show how tight it was here, and it also doesn't give a true scale of the size of these rocks and obstacles. Cameras, regardless of their quality, never do justice to the scale and difficulty of steep, treacherous
All the way over
terrain.
this way.
Am I getting on this rock or not?
So far not. Straight now. Go this way. Oh, oh. Yeah. Straight at me. Straight to me. Straight to me. Alright, go that way. Watch the back on my side. Straight, straight. Okay. There you
Oh,
go.
there we go. I got a little slide.
Go wide. Go
Good call,
wide.
dude. Good call.
Watch that
Yeah, I
one.
see that big guy.
I got hung up on that one.
All right, good call. Thanks, dude. That's the one I heard you go pop.
Jake will again find that his narrow vehicle profile is an asset in this tight terrain, just like it was on our trip through the Alexander Mackenzie Trail. That 22R motor may not have enough power to pull the skin off a rice pudding, but the truck is small enough to sneak through places where the rest of the vehicles struggle.
Hey, easy on the old Yoda, man. It's sacred.
So are the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're about the same age. Just messing with you, man. It's an awesome old truck and it's in great shape for its age. It's pretty darn capable too.
Yeah. Hug that rock straight at, drive straight to me. Yeah, straight, look straight at me and you're good to go.
Hello, my children. Well, gathered here today to hear me speak of good times. Good times that will lift your troubled and tired hearts. But that is not the case today, my children. Oh, no! For I received a message last night. A message from none other than the great book itself. And in that great book it speaks of a time when all...
We came upon this spot here where the creek had flooded sometime before and washed out the trail, which required us to descend off camber into the creek bed, then ascend back onto the trail on the other side. It was definitely nerve-wracking for sure.
Cody and I came upon this first, and after a quick survey, Cody simply drove off the trail and into the creek bed, much to my surprise. Before we knew it, we were on the other side and out of the vehicle, ready to help guide Fox and Jake through.
Of course, we didn't film every spot along this trail, but what we did gives you a good representation of what to expect. There are areas that are not for the faint of heart, and not all of them have chicken tracks to bypass an obstacle, so bear that in mind if you decide you want to travel this trail.
It's just the way of the world.
I got it, man.
After that spot in the trail, we decided to start seriously looking for a good camping spot. It was not looking like we were going to finish this trail before nightfall, and I hate trying to find a camping spot in the dark. Plus, if we're on the trail at night, it increases the possibility of unintended damage trying to push through these trickier obstacles. We've definitely wheeled difficult tracks in the dark before, but if there's no need to, then why force it? Besides, I'm anxious to cook the boys a new creation I thought up for our first night in the Pine Nuts. I brought everything I needed for barbecue brisket, loaded baked potato. In the hopes that it whets the appetite, it's a butcher-bought beef brisket that is barbecued over an open campfire, shaved, sliced, and put on top of a baked potato that is loaded with butter, sautéed garlic mushrooms, sour cream, fresh chives, and after everything is loaded, I put on my homemade barbecue sauce. I'll try to include a campfire cookout segment on our next trip.
It weighs about 48 pounds by itself.
Let that cool down and I'll have to use that
Exactly where that went.
We started out the morning with a great breakfast of bacon and eggs and toast, and then packed up to hit the trail.
I'm an early riser, so Ruger and I went out before the crew was awake and hiked a couple miles up the trail. We were certainly not out of this trail yet, as you will see.
We struck out from camp with Jake's intel that we're going to soon come upon our first encumbrance of the day. Each time we came to a spot, Cody got on the radio and asked, "Is this it?" The answer was no for the first 20 minutes or so, but there would be no reason to ask once we reached the spot.
Funny side story here. Ruger came running to camp just after I woke up. Jake was nearly an hour behind him. I'm not embarrassed to say I was damn worried about Jake after about a half an hour. Ruger is usually never outside of earshot of Jake, so it was outside of normal for sure. Jake eventually showed up and explained that he had somehow been separated from Ruger when he hiked up a side canyon a short distance. When he came back down, Ruger was gone.
He actually went back to my truck after he lost track of time and I lost track of him.
Through times of change and in despair, you carried on without a care. I watch you go and slip away. The feelings of this matter are so great.
You'll come to it. And,
Well, I like to say you changed my life. Yeah.
ride is up and around the tree.
So pick up the gun and pay the price. Yeah. I'll be alright. Just say goodbye. I'll be alright. Just say goodbye. It was easy, oh, with no mistakes. We would give and you would take. You promised you would make a change, but your changes didn't change anything.
Stopping here was the natural thing to do. We each scoped out our best lines, and as soon as we were set up with cameras, Cody got into it. Again, he would try a more challenging line. He's always up for putting his frontier through its paces. He can definitely get quite impressive articulation for an IFS truck. Fox mentioned that several times yesterday while trailing him.
be alright.
When I came down off of that last rock, I thought I may have foolishly wedged myself into a difficult spot, but after a quick survey, Jake directed me back up onto the rock that I just came down off of. Twin lockers make a difference in these types of situations. They give you traction so you aren't spinning your tires in an attempt to find some. That's how you damage your differentials and axles, among other things.
I'll tell you something. Everyone that gets an opportunity to ride off-road in Cody's Frontier will love it. He's got that truck dialed. He's also a great off-roader. He never panics or gets worked up. He's calm and collected everywhere.
Thanks for the kind words, but honestly, if you want to see someone off-road like a boss, watch Jake wheel while we were on the Alexander Mackenzie Heritage Trail trip.
Absolutely. I still can't get over his Blackwater River crossing at Pan Meadow Crossing. That was impressive. Check it out on our channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to subscribe.
This was a difficult track through here. There were no easy ways through or any bypasses. It was going to require a good spotter and a little bit of patience.
When I once was a young man, I had a dream of flying in the sky. The preacher said, won't you sit down, son? I'm trying to watch a sacrilegious boy fly. I said, I'm gonna be an angel while you a man of Almighty's house. Yeah, you could watch the fire in the sky, left those mountains hold you up in the clouds. Ooh, the Reverend lost the war on the hills of the Black Rock Shore. Ooh, he fought too hard and so all he did was give me more. Let the sun beat down on the mountains, let that peace swim free in the sea. Let that hole in my heart be filled by the things I love. Let me be free. I was finding my way, looking for antiquities in a dark land deep in the sand, known only by the Pleiades. You see, I spoke with their father, you know, the man who stood and held up the sky and all of the stars, and now he owns me as well. Ooh, the Reverend lost the war on the hills of the Black Rock Shore. Oh, yeah, he fought too hard and so all he did was give me more. Let that sun beat down on the mountains, let that fear swim free in the sea. Let that hole in my heart be filled.
Fox has been wheeling before, but nothing quite like this. And for someone who's fairly new to this type of off-roading, he's driving this trail like an old pro.
It's definitely trial by fire for him, but you wouldn't know it. He's calm and deliberate, taking every obstacle in stride.
Yeah, Fox, you have an open invitation to join us anytime on our adventures. Let's get you a winch for that bumper first, though.
So a little about Fox's ride. It's a third generation 4Runner with a 3-inch coil lift, an ARB front bumper, and factory rear locker, riding on 33-inch tires. Cody actually went with him to look it over before buying it, and according to him, Fox got a good deal on it.
It has a few miles, but is well outfitted and well taken care of. My mechanic went over it after he got it back home and was pleasantly surprised with its mechanical condition.
Good. Crank her over this way. No, this way.
You go backward?
Come forward.
Hold right.
Alright, good. Back this way. Chris, back this way.
This spot reminds me a lot of the first time I needed a spotter. I struggled to both watch and to a certain extent trust my spotter. Fox also had that issue here. I think he wanted to trust his eyes more than me.
Don't worry, Fox. Everyone does the same thing the first time they are in this kind of spot.
Straight at me. Straight to me. Alright, you're good to go.
Great job, Fox.
Good job.
Our morning generally consisted of what we had experienced the previous day, except the obstacles seemed to be getting a little more challenging the further we went. Every time we got to a difficult spot, we would survey the potential lines, and if needed, we would spot each other.
We started noticing the canyon getting wider around noon or so, and it presented us with some nice views and a few longer, flatter sections of the trail. Honestly, we were all thinking that the end of the trail couldn't be more than a quarter mile ahead, but we were entirely wrong. Every quarter mile, we were into something new and seemed no closer to the end. It was like that all afternoon.
Hey, are you seeing Fox in your rear view? We didn't know it yet, but Jake's rig was starting to have a problem and it would soon show up.
The Pine Nut Mountains are so named from the forests of pinyon pine trees that grow on this small mountain range. This species of tree produces pine cones that are loaded with pine nuts. They're delicious in their natural form, but it's tricky to remove them from their shell.
As you've seen, we started up into the mountains from a mostly treeless valley. Treeless is a great way to describe most of Nevada, but don't be fooled. There's a lot of natural beauty in Nevada and endless trails to explore and sights to see. As we climbed up the slopes on our way to the trailhead yesterday, we began seeing more and more trees. When we hit the trail, pinyon pine and junipers were all around us. Now that we're descending on the northern end of the range, you can see the trees starting to thin out. The rocks and terrain will continue to impress though. Nevada has been in the past and continues to be to this day a mining state. It's rich in nearly everything. We've run across active mines for copper, gypsum, iron, silver, and of course gold, and many abandoned mines and prospecting holes. This particular trail goes through a gold-rich area, and you can see many spots where prospecting has occurred, most likely over a century ago. Trying to research this canyon's history has been difficult as there are two El Dorado canyons in Nevada. One in northern Nevada and one in southern Nevada. The one in southern Nevada is much more well known, so most research I've done comes up with information for the southern Nevada one. I'll keep researching and hopefully we'll come up with some of the history of this little canyon.
With that said, if anybody has information on the history of this trail and the canyon, feel free to leave a link in the comments.
Fox, if you can hear me and you need a spot, let Jake know.
As Cody mentioned earlier, I might have a potential problem, and here it is. The weight of my home-crafted roof rack broke the mount on the driver's side. It was obviously a design flaw, but we did our best to MacGyver a fix.
Got a little play because it keeps sliding this way every time.
Shortly after fixing Jake's roof rack, we came upon this little section of rocks, and though it doesn't look very challenging, it did have a couple of big boulders near the beginning that were a tight squeeze for all of us except Jake.
We actually thought we had a traffic jam through here, as there were some quad riders near where the camera was set up. Cody stopped and waited for them to come through, as we knew we would plug up the trail for several minutes if we had started through before them.
Cody actually hopped out and walked down to tell them to come through, but it turned out they had stopped there deliberately to watch us wheel our way through this spot.
They were a couple of older guys from Dayton that often ride their quads right off of their property and up into the mountains here. They were the ones to put a name to this trail for us. Up until this point, it was just some random numbered trail on a topo map.
They gave us a brief history about the mining and ranching that has occurred in this specific area of the mountain range. We were happy to talk with them and got some intel on the trail going forward. They told us that the trail had been washed out a year or two back, and that we would need to keep to our left, not far down the trail, to be able to bypass that specific section, as it was not passable with any vehicle.
I think our new friends enjoyed watching us go through here as much as we enjoyed driving it.
You're stuck on the ceiling. You're coming down from the feeling. I know what it's like. Well, I know what it's like. You're stuck on the ceiling. You're coming down from
Compared to Jake's truck, that thing's silent.
Hey, I'm pretty screwed. Rack really broke now.
Oh, that was the rack snapping?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, it shifted to the right and you just broke your right mount in half.
Sadly, our MacGyver fix didn't hold, and now we had to figure out a way to fix not just one mount, but two. There's nothing worse than the noise Jake just heard there. I know there's a couple 100 pounds of weight that just crashed down on his roof. There's going to be damage up there for sure.
We pulled up onto a gravel bar in the middle of the creek bed to assess damage and come up with a plan.
Yeah, that fuel alone's a lot, like 80 pounds.
You have to be prepared for failures and damage when you go out wheeling. With that in mind, you should always have an assortment of tools and supplies. You'll never know how important a simple pair of pliers or baling wire can be until you find a use for them that gets you out of a bind.
After offloading Jake's cargo and distributing it throughout the other vehicles, we decided to sandwich his recovery boards between his roof rack and the cab. It was anything but ideal, but it worked, and we were able to continue through the rest of the trip like that.
Yeah, well,
I'm not too worried about it.
we don't want to do any more. Like I said, paintless dent repair, you won't believe what we did.
I don't think this.
Eventually, we came up with a fix that would work and got back on the trail.
We would keep to our left at every opportunity, but it continually led us to dead ends, oftentimes requiring us to back up. We stopped here in this grove of cottonwoods to inspect the roof rack repair and grab a quick bite to eat for lunch. Cody upgraded to a large off-road fridge a few years back, and it may be the greatest single thing for our off-road adventures of all time. It keeps food and beverages cold and or frozen indefinitely. We could also tell we were near the outlet of this trail from this point, but we had a sneaking feeling that there might be a few more surprises ahead of us.
Yeah, we would have some technical little spots like this one, But after our late lunch, the canyon started back into the shade, and once again we thought we may have to find a camping spot along the trail. If we aren't out of here and back into the valley soon, that's exactly what will have to happen.
We can definitely tell that there has been a flash flood through here in the recent past, just like the quad riders said. The rocks and boulders are noticeably jumbled and have been moved around, making for unnatural paths through the creek bed. This required us to make multi-point turns in many areas like this one.
The boys are killing it though. With spots only needed here and there, we make good enough time that it's difficult for our cameraman to get set up for many shots. We finally see our exit onto a proper trail heading up the side of the canyon here. Cody picks his way across the creek bed to get set up for the climb up and out. First he'd have to pick his way through to get there.
I don't know what's in front of me. I don't know.
You got a tree over here. Yeah, come up to this tree. How's you look on that corner? Okay. He's on the big rock now. Alright. Back there good. Yeah, now just bring it this way as far as you can.
Unfortunately, our camera is set up in a position that doesn't show how extreme the exit from the creek bed to this goat path type trail is. We had sat and chatted about whether the right-hand turn coming up the creek bank onto an extreme off-camber dip to the right was even possible with anything but a quad. Cody chose to take this trail, feeling comfortable that he would make it without an issue.
In reality, it wasn't as comfortable as I had let on. It was an extreme off-camber right-hand turn onto an extreme side slope. The camera could be filming us in the Walmart parking lot as far as you can tell, but trust me that it was as extreme as you'd want it to be and then some. Fox's phone would capture it the best, but it still doesn't do it justice.
We tried the same thing he did. That dip was pretty extreme. Now this part, fuck man. Your rear locker on?
Yep. I'm gonna need it, huh? Okay. Start it.
Yeah, I get the feeling that you went away, 'cause you didn't care anymore. You were afraid.
Good. Okay.
Let it push back just a little bit. There you go. A little more.
Good. Stopping. Okay, here we go.
Maybe even back it up a little bit from there.
Good.
All right.
There.
Further in, you got it.
Good, you can tell me. All right, here we go.
Beautiful, beautiful.
We drove to the top of the goat trail to find that the exit that we were looking for was in reality a quarter to a half mile down the canyon. But after consulting the map, we could see where we were and that this trail would take us to where we needed to go.
As day transitioned to night, we found ourselves a nice flat spot to set up, and soon we had a fire burning and food cooking. The great thing about camping with Cody is that you never suffer a bad meal. He always has something planned for every occasion.
You don't know the pain I'd bear when I play the songs we share. All that time you were gone.
After a good breakfast, we struck out from camp with the goal of finding our way up to Como, a small ghost town up the trail that the vehicle off in the distance is coming down. We've been there more times than we can count, and we will strike out from there over into Smith Valley.
These volcanic outcroppings in Smith Valley are home to our first camping spot out here approximately 12 years ago. We stopped to let both Chris's see these unique features at the eastern base of the mountain range. We have fond, fun memories of this spot, but we need to push back up into the mountains to make it to our next camping spot.
We arrived at our final campsite at nearly 8,000 foot elevation with plenty of daylight left. We set up, explored around, and talked about this newest adventure out here and reminisced about previous ones. We were all in agreement. This was an awesome trip, and we would be back out here again to explore more of the pine nuts.
Off-roading is for everyone with the spirit of exploration mixed with a dash of wanderlust.
We encourage everyone to get out and see these wild places with friends and family. You'll make memories that will last a lifetime.
Who knows what you'll find out there? Something new, something old. Maybe you'll find us behind the next bend in the trail. Come on out and see. Thanks again for watching, folks, and if you have suggestions of where you'd like to see us go next, please feel free to leave them in the comments. We love to tackle the lesser-known trails that North America has to offer. Who knows, we may even invite you to join us on the next adventure in Off-Road Origins. A special thanks goes out to Chris Bonzal of Cinematic Aesthetic. Chris is a talented videographer and does work all over the western United States. Hit him up on Instagram for anything from weddings to high-end real estate presentations. You can find him on Instagram at cinematic_aesthetic_. Thanks again, Chris. You were awesome. On this video, you've been rocking out to Greedy Lion. They're a NorCal band who recently released their debut album, and what an album it is. We love it. Keep up the great work, guys. Can't wait for your next one. If you've liked what you've heard, please check them out on iTunes, Spotify, or any other reputable music downloading service. For the latest updates and info on the band, follow them at Greedy Lion Music on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again, boys. You're the best. Again, stay tuned for a quick update, and thanks again for watching. We really appreciate it.
Just pushing him back in the hole.
So hi guys, thanks again for watching. Wanted to give you a quick update. As you can see, things have changed a little bit. I'm not running my Nissan Frontier anymore. Unfortunately, I had a bit of a traffic incident, so we had to retire that one. At any rate, for the Nissan fans out there, don't worry, this is not the beginning of the end for me with Nissans. I love Nissan products, and I will own one again. When it came time for me to look for a new ride to build, the FJ Cruiser just checked off all the points that I was looking for. So that's where I landed, and that's what I'm building right now. In the process of getting this outfitted, ready for its first trip. We'll probably do a quick weekender here sometime in the near future, but other than that, right now I'm just in the building phases. So anyway, with the closure of the border up to Canada, we aren't going to be able to make another Canadian trip happen. It doesn't look like this summer. So we've got a lower 48 trip planned that will be just perfect for us and for you. So anyway, please like and subscribe, and definitely give us your comments. We love to hear from you, and your support is so important to us. So thanks again, and keep wheeling, guys. Take care.